Namaste, Assalamu alaikum, Shalom, Ni hao, Buenos dias, Hezeche, Akwaba, welcome. What up, though? This is Melange, Cafe Melange. Week numero ocho, session numero uno. And that shine, though. It's bright. So, to be honest, actually, today is Diwali. And just an FYI for future reference, being Diwali, it is also an Upasada day. It is the new moon. And so, new for new moons and full moons, Upasada days, ain't no joints for future reference. So I said earlier the past week that God willing there'll be one today without looking specifically on the schedule. So that's my bad. But because I do that, because I said that, and because I invoke the divine providence, inshallah, Baruch Hashem, Bezrat Hashem, God willing, I'm doing it. So here I am, 20 minutes after the hour, 20 minutes, minutos. So anyways, just for future reference, full moon days, new moons, off days. And today is a particularly auspicious day, Diwali, celebration of that shine though. So anyways, that's what we're dealing with today. I've got a partial kosa, shows. I guess that's the blend. Kosa and shows. Shows is the same word en français. And then I've got a full kosa. And the partial kosa, actually, I'll say what it is. It's about, again, it's a topic of sex. If I look at that again. But it's actually a continuation of a couple of different conversations. One talking about sex as a cipher and the bond, the lifelong bond that is established regardless of where the people go afterwards, what the people do afterwards, what the people say beforehand, and additionally, a lifelong bond. So building from that joint, but then also building from the notion of politics, melange identity, where we place our priorities, politically, economically, socially, religiously, and spiritually, and additionally. So basically, it's a partial kosa because I have yet to kind of go through all the steps. Intellectually or cognitively, to see where it goes, to provide the tangible, beneficial lesson from the consideration. So, having yet done that, what I will do is just share like some notes about the idea of the consideration. And see how full that is. One of the concerns is, obviously, when talking about sex specifically, it's a very sensitive and important topic, and it's very important to be mindful and to be concentrated when talking about this, and purposeful, and to abstain from, or to be as clear in the communication as possible. And so one of the concerns is when talking about myself, because there are some thoughts that I share about myself, to understand the purposefulness of that, so that amidst the egotism and the chauvinism and the bias, and additionally, there's additional further purposeful reason that is understood readily for me communicating what I communicate. So rather than me doing ego boasting or like, oh yeah, back in my day, when talking about my past reference or my past history, it's relevant and it's important to understand, particularly considering the lessons that I learned afterwards, Um, but it also can be perceived as me being egotistical about me talking about my past and looking, uh, being chauvinistic or selfish or whatever, and simply perpetuating the transgressions that I previously commit, in many of which I have yet to make full amends. And I'm uncertain if I may ever be able to in this life, if it's even possible. But anyways, digressing. So the consideration about this, the notes, is that um, how our sexual relationship or ships, um, influence our economics, influence our politics, influence our spirituality and religiosity, um, and our social relationships, our comprehensive relationships, but particularly political alignment, and political alignment along ethnocentric lines. Um, so uh, the consideration is that, again, when two people have sexual intimacy with each other, there's a bond that's formed. And speaking from first hand occasion, with such, um, there is an onus, like a charge, a responsibility, a call, um, that a man experiences, um, seemingly in one of two directions: either alignment with the group of the woman, um, particularly if she's part of the same group, ethno group or cultural group of the man, then it's like, oh, you bit some of the fruit. Oh, now you got to pay for it. Now you got to like contribute to the community. You gotta like own up to that. Um, and so it's a matter of like, okay, he's pledging allegiance. Like he's like, all right, he's in it. He's in the game now. So he's got to like abide by that, and all of the hierarchies and everything else that come with that. Or the second one is he's a transgressor. He's not abiding by the allegiance and the not conforming to the norms, and additionally, and basically, it's a conquest. And it's like, oh yeah, I did this and that and the other, even when it's within his own group. And that becomes an increasingly individualistic kind of endeavor within life, of being out for me, myself, and I. But those seem to be like, and like I said, it's a little bit. I have to do some additional concentration about that. But those seem to be like the two things: whether he accepts the responsibility or he doesn't accept the responsibility. Um, Now, if it's a woman who's from a different group than his own, then there's that calling into question, because he's for life, one way or the other. He's always going to have responsibility for his own community, or communities, particularly in the consideration of being mélanger. But if the woman is from a different group, then, oh, is he gonna do the honorable thing, be married with her, and additionally, but even further, just, is he going to be aligned with the politics, the priorities, the issues, the cause, the struggle, well, of her community? Um, and so that's politically, economically, religiously, spiritually, socially, comprehensively. Um, and so there it is. Now, again, in the consideration of mélanger, well, here's the thing. In doing that, a man can assimilate into her culture, or the woman can assimilate into his culture, um, and just and be acknowledged as such by all the communities in consideration. Whether it's being considered a sellout by giving up one's own thing, or bringing in somebody and having captured somebody from the other side or whatever. So there are all those innuendos and stigmas and everything else, which is part of the difficulty of being melange. One of the challenges, one of the invitations for triumph and victory. But all that plays a part in it. So uh, now, then went as being melange and being in having sexual intimacy with someone from another group, even within one's own group, there's still going to be that melange experience. There is what can be considered a strengthening of that identity and that commitment, that alignment within melange. Um, Intrinsically, that's expected. Um, and then the consideration of whether people uh, accept that, own up to it, abide by that, honor that. So when I talk about my personal experience, there's the consideration of whether the fact that I have historically sexual intimacy with women from other ethnic communities, whether that's one of the reasons why I am so entrenched in this melange cause. That's a legitimate consideration, just as it is for anybody who's had a similar experience in one way or another, monoethnic or melange. Um, but it's something to consider for those who have such experience, for those who are considering such experiences, such being in a relationship with somebody from another ethnic community, or just being melange and having a relationship with anyone. The what some of the consequences are beyond our volition, beyond our choosing and individualism, um, because those uh, prices are actual. Um, those costs, those expectations, um, serious. Um, so, anyways, that is an initial consideration. Partial it is, um, but that is what I share for the moment. Um, Now here's the deuxième cosa. So I talk about principles, ethics, specifically I emphasize honesty, sobriety, veganism, marital fidelity, and ethical economics. These ain't just things I'm making up. These ain't things like, oh, that seems nice. Oh, yeah, let's write that down. No, these come from places. And this comes from years of study, decades of study, and then further affirmation from other people who've done similar work. And so, what I got right here is an articulation of these principles. So, the work I do in spiritual diplomacy focuses on teaching specifically from the tradition of Israel, Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, and Taoism. That includes continuous studies of Torah, Bhagavad Gita, Digha Nikaya and Dhammapada, Gospels, Quran, and Tao Te Ching. And so there are teachings within each of these holy scriptures that speak to that experience of honesty, sobriety, veganism, marital fidelity, and ethical economics. And there are teachings from additional traditions that are included on that sheet that I have in my hand. Additional traditions including, I guess actually, to be honest, the only additional tradition on here is Jainism. But that's just because that's the extent of my readily available and discernible studies at the moment. We can look at the Baha'i tradition, we can look at Sikh tradition, and additionally, and see these same principles emphasized. Some of these, like honesty, that seems to be a no-brainer. But then marital fidelity, what does that mean? Still taught and emphasized, even again within Baha'i and Sikh tradition. abstinence from intoxicants, sobriety, Sikhi and Baha'i tradition explicitly communicated. Um, but then, well, yeah, my point is not to get into the whole discourse about these, but um, some people might want to argue and disagree about, oh no, it says we can do this, we can do that, we can do that. In certain traditions, it is there are multiple teachings, and there are certain teachings that are emphasized. There are certain teachings that are subtle, um, particularly with the consideration of the temporal readiness of the recipients of the teachings. And that's something that's articulated within our spiritual traditions of earth as well. People being unready for it, and so a little bit of a hint uh, for those who are ready for it, and then saying eventually. Uh, so, anyways, what I'll do here is just read these out, and I got things to do. So, so important I am. I was trying to give like an introduction to each of these joints, but I just gave like a general introduction. So we'll see. I'll read it, um, and then I'll go back and then share some comments to see much available time. I'm trying to keep this under the next 10 minutes or so. Alright, into this for 15. Alright, here we go. First one is from the Kuddhadanta Sutta, from the Digha Nikaya of Buddhist tradition. This is what it says. When a man with a trusting heart takes upon himself the precepts, abstinence from destroying life, abstinence from taking what has not been given, abstinence from evil conduct in respect of lusts, abstinence from lying words, abstinence from strong, intoxicating, maddening drinks, the root of carelessness, that is a better sacrifice. That is a sacrifice better than open largesse, better than a perpetual alms, better than the gift of dwelling places, better than accepting guidance. The next one is from Shmot of the Torah, from Israel tradition. You should not murder. You should not commit adultery. You should not steal. You should not bear false witness against your neighbor. You should not covet your neighbor's house. You should not covet your neighbor's wife, his manservant, his maidservant, his ox, his donkey, or whatever belongs to your neighbor. The next is from the Anivratas of Jain tradition. Ahimsa, non-violence. Satya, truth. Asetya, non-stealing. Brahmacharya, chastity. Aparigraha, non-possessiveness. And the next one is from Patanjali Yamas of Hindu tradition. Ahimsa, non-violence. Satya, truth. Asetya, non-stealing. Brahmacharya, chastity. Aparigraha, non-possessiveness. The next is from the Gospel of Matthew, from the Gospels, from Christian tradition. Just then a man came up to Jesus and asked, Teacher, what benevolent thing must I do to get eternal life? Why do you ask me what is benevolent? Jesus replied. There is only one who is benevolent. If you want to enter life, keep the commandments. Which ones? He inquired. Jesus replied, You should not murder, you should not commit adultery, you should not steal, you should not give false testimony, honor your far and more, and love your neighbor as yourself. The next one is from Surah al-Bani Israel of the Quran of Islamic tradition. Kill not your children for fear of want. We shall provide sustenance for them as well as for you. Verily, the killing of them is a great sin. Nor come nigh to adultery, for it is a shameful deed, and an evil opening the road to other evils. Nor take life, which Allah has made sacred, except for just cause. And if anyone is slain wrongfully, we have given his heir authority to demand qisas, or to forgive. But let him not exceed bounds in the matter of taking life, for he is held by the law. Come not nigh to the orphan's property except to improve it until he attains the age of full strength, and fulfill every engagement, for every engagement will be inquired into on the day of reckoning. Give full measure when ye measure, and weigh with a balance that is straight. That is the most fitting and the most advantageous in the final determination. And pursue not that of which thou hast no knowledge, for every act of hearing or of seeing or of feeling in the heart will be inquired into on the day of reckoning. Nor walk on the earth with insolence, for thou cannot rend the earth asunder, nor reach the mountains in height. The next is from the Brahmajala Sutta of the Digha Nikaya of Buddhist tradition. Having abandoned the destruction of life, the recluse Gautama abstains from the destruction of life. He has laid aside the rod and the sword, and dwells conscientious, full of kindness, compassionate for the welfare of all living beings. It is in this way, bhikshus, that the worldling would speak when speaking in honor of the Tathagata. Or you might say, having abandoned taking what is not given, the recluse Gotama abstains from taking what is not given. Accepting and expecting only what is given, he dwells in honesty and rectitude of heart. Or you might say, having abandoned unchaste living, the recluse Gotama lives the life of chastity. He dwells remote from women and abstains from the vulgar practice of sexual intercourse. Or you might say, having abandoned false speech, the recluse Gotama abstains from falsehood. He speaks only the truth. He lives devoted to truth, trustworthy and reliable. He does not deceive anyone in the world. Or we might say, having abandoned slander, the recluse Gotama abstains from slander. He does not repeat elsewhere what he has heard here, in order to divide others from the people here. Nor does he repeat here what he has heard elsewhere, in order to divide these from the people there. Thus he is a reconciler of those who are divided and a promoter of friendships. Rejoicing, delighting, and exulting in concord, he speaks only words that are conducive to concord. Or we might say, having abandoned harsh speech, the recluse Gotama abstains from harsh speech. He speaks only such words as are gentle, pleasing to the ear, endearing, going to the heart, urbane, amiable, and agreeable to many people. Or we might say, having abandoned idle chatter, the recluse Gotama abstains from idle chatter. He speaks at the right time, speaks what is factual, speaks on the benevolent, on the Dhamma, and the discipline. His words are worth treasuring, they are timely, backed by reason, definite, and connected with the benevolent. The next is from chapter Uno of the Tao Te Ching of Chinese tradition. The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The nameless is the origin of heaven and earth. The named is the more of myriad things. Thus, constantly without desire, one observes its essence. Constantly with desire, one observes its manifestations. These two emerge together, but differ in name. The unity is said to be the mystery. Mystery of mysteries, the door to all wonders. So those are the joints. I'll see how much I can give it like a brief explanation of each one. And there's only one actually that I observed, that I perceive requiring a certain amount of explanation of why it's included in this listing. So the first one, Kuddhadanta Sutta of the Digha Nikaya Buddhist tradition, pretty much explains it straight out, all five principles. Absence from destroying life, abstinence from taking what has not been given, absence from respect in evil conduct in respect of lusts, absence from lying words, and abstinence from strong, intoxicating, maddening drinks. That's all five right there. So that's one of the reasons why it's first. So, there it is. Now, so what's the context? So basically, a person was asking the Buddha about living a righteous life, and there was a series of like what's like from where he is at that moment, what would be the thing to live a righteous life? And so the Buddha says, here's something you can do. And the guy says, okay, all right, I can see that. Now is there anything better than that? And then the Buddha says, well, now here's what you can do. And so the guy's like, okay, that sounds nice too. How about next? And so Buddha said, well, now here's what you can do. And so actually those were listed at the end of it. Better than perpetual alms, better than dwelling places, better than open larges, better than perpetual alms, better than dwelling places, better than accepting guidance. So this was like the fifth one in a succession of like steps of upping one's righteous game. Now, to be honest, I'll say it at, I'll leave it there. That's what the Buddha communicates. It ain't even this ain't the top of it, but the Buddha says that it's up there. The next teaching is from Shemot, the Torah of Israel tradition. This is actually the concluding 5 commandments of the 10 commandments. So it's the 10 commandments right there. That's how authoritative it is, even within the tradition of Israel, within Judaism. Again, it's 4 of the 5 that are directly aligned. Not murder, not committing adultery, not stealing, not bearing false witness. Now the 5th one was not coveting. And then you say, well, we can drink all we want. Well, again, we can talk about that, particularly if you're not a Levi. And if you're not giving offerings. Oh, interesting right there. So there's that consideration and conversation. The next teaching is the Anivratas from Jain tradition. And so these are actually, there's also the Mahavrata, which is the large or the great vow that monks make within the Jain tradition as a distinguishing factor of and discipline and leading a righteous life. And so again, 4 of the 5 are right explicitly lined up. Not ahimsa, asatya. Let me say it again. Ahimsa, satya, asatya, brahmacharya, and aparigraha. Non-violence, truth, non-stealing, chastity, and then the 5th one is non-possessiveness. So again, you say, what about sobriety, intoxicants? Actually, within Jainism, it's also prohibited. So that is just not included as one of the 5. So it's a fundamental, basic teaching. Premise and foundational teaching within Jain tradition, as it is within Buddhism and Judaism the tradition of Israel. The next teaching is the Patanjali Yamas. You might notice it's the exact same as the Mahabharata. Very interesting. I have yet to read up significantly on that conjunction. And to be honest, my familiarity with Patanjali is comparatively modest. It's distinct from the writings of the Bhagavad Gita or the Upanishads with which I am increasingly familiar. But Patanjali is a Hindu religious leader, scholar from over 2,000 years ago, those years ago, and he writes these basic, he writes a number of patents that provide a summation of all Vedic teachings and discipline, and this is one of the teachings that he provides accordingly. So, if you go to the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads, as much as I know, I'm increasingly familiar with the Bhagavad Gita, and moderately familiar with the Upanishads. To be honest, I have to be careful of what I say about the Upanishads, because there may be an explicit listing of the five or a large number of the five. But in the Bhagavad Gita, there are teachings along those lines, but there's an absence of like a list of a doctrinal list of do's and don'ts per se that articulate this succinctly in one kind of easily digestible passage. So I share the Patanjali Yamas. The next teaching is from Matthew, the Gospels of Christian tradition. Again, it's explicitly listed the four of the five: not murder, not commit adultery, not steal, not give false testimony. Then it adds honor your father more and love your neighbor as yourself. So right there, Jesus is referencing those four commandments that I just mentioned from the Ten Commandments from the Torah. And then also adding honor your father more and love your neighbor as yourself. Now you can seriously say, oh, wait a minute, I know you do drink wine on communion and this and the other, haha. We can talk about that too. We can talk about what Paul says about drinking wine, according to my best recollection. And we can talk about what comes out of a man. So, anyways, particularly when he drinks. There's that. The next teaching is from Surah Al-Bani Israel, which is from the Quran of Islam. And now this is interesting because, again, within the Quran there are teachings that are very direct and explicit along each of these lines. Honesty, sobriety, veganism. We can talk about veganism. Probably Islam, out of all the traditions, is probably the least. Well, I don't want to say least or most, but there are strong arguments to the counter of veganism within Islam in the Quran. But marital fidelity and ethical economics are explicitly written, explicitly taught and included throughout the Quran. This is one passage where it's kind of all included in one passage in a comparatively succinct manner, which is why it is included within this list accordingly. It begins by not killing children, by not committing adultery, and then it goes on again to say not taking life, except for just cause. But even then, don't be excessive, because the person who would benefit from that is held by the law, and there's other ways of getting justice. Give full measure. So right there, ethical economics, but also honesty. Not stealing from orphans. Again, honesty, ethical economics. And then not pursue that which thou hast no knowledge. And again, honesty, feeling that every act of hearing, seeing, and feeling in the heart will be inquired into on the day of reckoning. Honesty. So there's that. Now you go, what about sobriety? Come on, it says in the Quran very explicitly not to drink. It says there's a little bit of benefit and a lot of harm, and the harm further outweighs the benefit. Don't drink. So there it is. Now, the next teaching again is going back to Buddha tradition, the Brahmajala Sutta of the Digha Nikaya, and it basically re-articulates the four of the five. It didn't include in this particular listing the sobriety, but it's very safe to say it's very much explicitly prohibited, or I should say prohibited, because Buddha doesn't talk in that way. It just says it's admonished within the Digha Nikaya Buddha tradition. So this passage is a different sutta. It's actually the first sutta of the Digha Nikaya, and basically to give some reference of what the significance of this teaching. Basically, the Digha Nikaya begins. The long discourses of the Buddha begin by describing how another spiritual teacher and his student were following in a procession of Buddha and the Sangha from one place to another, and the two were the teacher and the student were arguing against each other about the teachings of the Buddha, and then the Buddha's disciples kind of observed this and then were like relayed this back to the Buddha eventually, and so the Buddha was like, don't get caught up in what people say about us. If you get mad at them, that's going to judge you. That's going to cloud your judgment. And if you get happy about it, that's going to cloud your judgment. Just look at it factually. Is it accurate? Is it inaccurate? And make a determination accordingly. Then the Buddha goes on to describe how there are people going to talk about us, and if somebody wants to like praise us and like, or I don't want to say praise, if someone wants to honor us, I only say praise when it comes to God. If somebody wants to honor us, and this, then this is what they might honor. And even then, those are like the minimal things. That's like the minor details of mere morality, is what it's called, or mere virtue. Um, so it's not even like the greater teachings of the greater discipline of the greater awareness. But it is relevant. It is appropriate. But so the people of the earth, people of the world, who are celebrating our cause, our way, our walk, a lot of them might talk about this. And so he lists what those basic disciplines are: abstinence from destroying life, abstinence from unchaste living, abstinence from taking what is not given, abstinence from false speech. And then it goes on to describe even further what kind of communications: slander, harsh speech, idle chatter, stuff like that. All that is considered as a part of uh, greed, greed, hatred, delusion. So, anyways, that's what the elongated passage is here. And then the concluding teaching is from the Tao Te Ching. And this is probably the one that requires the first amount the furthest amount of these of explanation. It doesn't say anywhere about not drinking and not killing and not stealing and not lying and not committing adultery. Um, yes and no. Because first of all, the Tao Te Ching is a different type of document. It is comparatively non-doctrinal. It doesn't. It does provide certain guidance about what to do and what not to do, but it seems from being doctrinal in the sense of, do this, don't do that, and listing it out and being kind of like carrot and stick about it. So, but if you read it, if you study it, then you see that it does say that. Um, it does give very specific guidance about humility, about acting without action, about non-interference, about non-imposing upon others. But ultimately, it's all about finding harmony with the way, and with the way that includes the others around us, the world around us. So, um, just by it being last, this might be saying this is what other people are doing. Find peace with that. Find harmony with that. Find connection and relationship with that. It's actually the Tao Te Ching in Taoism is very native. It has a very strong native wisdom. If people are familiar with native traditions here on Turtle Island, on this side of Turtle Island, um, about relationship, the circle, the medicine wheel, the sacred hoop, and additionally, a lot of that can be found. Those concepts and that wisdom can be found in the Tao Te Ching as well. Um, but here, something else that can be found also is desire. Um, the teachings of humility, shui, and additionally are there about nature, and the principles of nature being applied to governance and our interaction with other people and other beings. But I share this first chapter, chapter numero uno, because without another chapter that explicitly talks to the discipline of uh, honesty, sobriety, veganism, marital fidelity, and ethical economics, what I share is the basic um, message that leads to that from the Tao Te Ching. And it's chapter uno. And it first begins by saying the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. So right there, it's like I can tell you exactly what it is, but even then, that's not exactly what it is. So it's a matter of being aware of that accordingly, knowing what is communicated, but also knowing that there's something beyond that as well. Being mindful of that, being honoring that. So there's that. But here's like what's the most probably the most proximate element from this particular passage. It is this. Thus, constantly without desire, one observes its essence. Constantly with desire, one observes its manifestations. So it's that notion of desire. When we are without desire, when we're not being selfish about our intentions and our aspirations, then the universe opens up to us. And we see the essence of the universe. But the exact second we start to become selfish, that we say, oh, I can do this with that, I can do that, ho ho. Now we're only seeing the manifestations. We're only seeing the consequences. We're seeing the results. We're seeing the aftermath. And without saying one's greater than the other and one's lesser than the other, it's just a matter of understanding the nature of the distinction. And the purposefulness, the applicability, and additionally. And so I also highlight that passage because this is exactly what the Buddha teaches about desire. Dukkha, life is suffering, dukkha. And suffering is caused by our desire, our insatiable desire. And it is when we cultivate a discipline to hone a purposefulness within our desire that we find the path towards nirvana. And so Lao Tzu right here is talking about the same thing, about desire. Now Lao Tzu does it in a different way, with a different kind of language and a certain different type of gentleness. But it's the exact same thing, of understanding the harmony, understanding the nature, and recognizing that when you're without desire, when we are without desire, the universe opens up. And when we begin to have desire, the universe closes. And so each of those things of dishonesty, intoxication, taking life, killing life, oppressing life, sexual indiscretion, and oppression, unethical economics, all those are factors of desire. And that's, other than saying that just live like a non-entity throughout life, partake of the earth, partake of interaction with others, and additionally, but with purposefulness, not with desire, with an intention of altruism, and one's own well-being included within the altruism. Altruism. So one is included within that. So it's not a matter of being selfless or self-sacrificing per se. It's a matter of balance and one existing within that balance. So when there is that purposefulness, it's beyond desire. It's purposeful. And so it's righteous. And that's what the Tao Te Ching teaches as well. And that's what I'm going to leave it at. So mañana, God willing, we will have a next session. That is what I have to share for today. Cafe Ménager. Hey, what do you say? Namaste. Assalamu alaikum. Shalom. Zaijian. Adios. Te Jacques. Sempre na asamugo. Kilik Ofred. One love and peace.